Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to day 3 of Wellbeing Week in Law. I'm Jerice Henson here with Kelly Tenney, and today we are going to discuss career and intellectual well-being. Kelly, let's start with talking about what career well-being is, and what does it mean to have career well-being?
But when we're talking about, career well-being, we really are looking at, how we can engage in work that's providing not only personal satisfaction, but it's also one that is consistent with the values that we have, the goals that we have in our own career and our lifestyle. And so, career wellness is really all about finding out how to create that balance among the different roles that you have in your workplace and how that contributes to, your overall values in your dream lifestyle, if you will.
Let's start talking a little bit about ourselves. So I have a position, maybe at a mass tort law firm, maybe at a different type of law firm, maybe any sort of company really. How do I know if I'm the right person for the seat I'm currently in? What are some ways that I can assess whether or not the job that I have and I'm currently doing is really right for me?
Number one thing that I think is the easiest sign is to listen to your gut. I mean, many people have great examples of how they have been in a job that was not a good fit. And typically your gut, your own feelings will be the first thing that tells you, this may not be the right role for you. And, any kind of feelings around that discomfort, not feeling passionate about the things that you do. A lot of what we spoke about yesterday, feeling bored, not wanting to do the tasks that are on your daily roles and responsibilities list. That's a big sign that you're not in the right position for you. And what I really would love to encourage everybody to understand is that careers do not have to be painful, right? I think that there's kind of this mentality of, well, that's what it means to be in the workplace. Like, it's about the paycheck, it's not about, do I love my job? And it really is about, do you love your job? And you and your own feelings will be the first thing that tells you whether or not you're in a job that you love and that's a good fit.
So I'm in a position, I have a job. How can I turn the job that I have into the job that I want? And why is it beneficial for me to craft my dream job or begin to, put together what that would look like, regardless of what I'm doing in the moment?
When it comes to, crafting your dream job, one of the things that I think is important that I live by on a daily basis is recognizing that when you have dreams in any aspect, right? But specifically, we're talking about when you have the idea of what your dream job looks like, you obviously are more likely then to go out and find it. If I'm in a role and I'm thinking like, man, but my dream job would be to have a team under me, just having clarity around that piece of my dream will motivate me and will potentially allow me to see the opportunities to where I can make that come true. And it goes back to not allowing yourself to be in a job where you think, whatever, I make good money, it doesn't have to be perfect, and recognizing that you can make it anything that you want. You absolutely can have a dream job. And when you hold on to that, the characteristics of what that looks like, and you take the time to craft it, you're more likely to see the opportunities around you that will take you that much closer to making that dream a reality.
Now let's turn to what sort of tools mass tort professionals can access to understand where they're best utilized at their workplaces, right? Some people, they come out of college or paralegal school and they're looking at a job description. How do we figure out how we can best be used in our workplaces?
there's so many strength tests that are out there and available to us.
Yes.
And I think that's probably one of the best ways to be able to identify where your strengths are. I like to call them our zones of genius, but what we're best at, what we're good at, and then that opens up the opportunity for us to work within our skills and our talent. So I know we use the predictive index. There's the Colby. There's Clifton Strength Finders. There's the DISC assessment, right? There's the Enneagram. Like, there are so many tests out there. And if you haven't taken one of those, I definitely would encourage you to even do a Google search of a strength test. So many of them are available and online, for free. And I love those kinds of tests. I always love seeing, what my strengths are and also where my weaknesses are, because when it comes to that whole component of career wellness, where you really want to be in a position that you enjoy, that's valuable, and where you're able to work in your strengths, not having that information can really hold someone back from being able to even recognize if that job is good for them. So, for example, I need systems. Like, it doesn't matter what test I take, but systems and structure is something that consistently comes up. So does being a lifelong learner. One of my Clifton strengths is being a learner. And so I know that I need to be in a position that allows me to have professional growth, that gives me space to learn, that gives me time to learn, and that either has structure or be in a position that allows me to put systems and structure in place. And, this goes back to an earlier question of, if we are in a role that we know maybe is not the best fit, how can we shift that? And I think knowing your strengths can help you shift that, because it empowers you to be able to say, hey, I'm really good at systematizing things, and I would love to lean into this part of the firm and really put, I think we can systematize this better. Or as a boss or a manager, being able to say, Jerice, I know that you are a learner and that's one of your strengths and that's what you find valuable. So I would love for you to attend this summit or this webinar, right? So that it's a mutual benefit for both attorneys and their support team to utilize these kinds of tests as a whole, because it not only empowers you as the employee, but it empowers your managers and your bosses to know what you're good at and maybe where there may be someone else on the team that is good at something that you're not, and how all of that kind of fits together.
Can we talk a little bit more about how, human resources departments or recruiters, what are some of the things that they can do to determine whether someone is a good fit, and even figuring out, what type of person should be in a role, since they ultimately are making the decisions around hiring?
Going back to using some of those assessments, I think that's a really key component. Having someone take a Colby test before they're interviewed. I know here at MTI, we use the predictive index. So anybody who is eligible and seems like a good fit for any of our positions, they will take one of those tests prior to the interview process, because that gives some really great insight on who that person is. And I also think it gives some really great insight on what kinds of questions to ask. So for example, if it's a startup firm, and knowing that there's not a lot of systems in place, if I were to interview you, for example, and to see that that's really what you like, being able to say, so Jerice, when you are in a position where maybe there's not so much structure, how do you handle that, right? So it really gives me some insight on the right questions to ask. And I think from the HR standpoint, another really important thing is asking some of the questions of tell me what you're good at, tell me from your past job, what was one thing that was on your role that you loved to do every day? And what was something on your daily role, responsibilities that you just hated to do? Give them that chance to tell you. Sometimes the person is going to be, they're the best expert on what they're good at, what they enjoy and what they don't. And really making sure that when you're asking those questions, and I think this is helpful, by the way, not just for HR, but even when we're just put on a team where we have to work with someone else, being able to say, what things do you like to do? Which things do you not like to do? And, maybe juries still say like, I hate data input. And I can be like, well, I love it. So maybe you and I working together can work on our strengths that way as a team. But making sure it's being asked in a non-judgmental way. Obviously, right? Like really just creating the space in the interview to say, it doesn't matter what you answer. Like, this is just me wanting to learn more about you.
So let's talk a little bit about, okay, now we're in the job. We've done the assessment. We're in the position. What is flow in our work and how can we achieve it?
One of the things I think with flow is recognizing that in order to have flow, you need to be working in your strengths. Every time we're doing a task that we don't like, every time we need to do something that we're not good at, it messes up our flow. And so I would say one of the biggest things, right? Because unless you are in your dream job, where you just love everything that you do, there's always going to be something that comes across your desk where you're like, this is not my favorite. But I think the biggest thing is recognizing in your own calendar when you are at your best. So for example, I'm a morning person. I'm most productive in the morning. The first 3 hours of my day are when I have the most focus, the most concentration. So for me, it probably would be putting those things that are a little more challenging at the top of my day, right? So that I am tackling them when I have the most energy, the most focus, and the most concentration, and I'm not leaving them for the end of the day when maybe I'm a little more tired or, and so forth. And certainly not in the middle. You really want to group tasks so that you are able to tackle the more challenging ones when you're at your best. And for some, that may be after lunch. For some, it may be like the last hour of the day. But I think recognizing that and really planning out, having a good handle on what is it I have to do today and scheduling the time for when you'll be tackling those tasks is a really great way to have that flow, because otherwise, I think that's when the job becomes unsatisfying, is when you're feeling that resistance throughout the day. And Donna is on joining us. Donna is a part of our team in the Duncan Law Firm, and she had a great question that I feel like kind of goes along with being in a position that has flow. Do you mind if I ask it? I will.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to share it so everyone can see. So Donna asks, sometimes self-care means recognizing that it's time to get yourself out of a toxic atmosphere or an unsatisfying job. And, that's what we're talking about, is when you don't have a good flow in the job, then it becomes unsatisfying. What tips do you have about what to think about when deciding to leave and how to go about it? So I'll go back to that first question, Donna. And I love this because I know that there's a lot of people that have a few jobs before they find one that they truly love and they know that this is the right fit for them. And I think, the first part is listening to your gut. When you start getting that, I'm kind of tired of this, I don't really enjoy coming to work. And I'll just share personally, I was a middle school health teacher for 15 years and I loved it. I worked with 185, 11, and 12-year-olds all day long. And I loved it for a good part of that. And then when I had my own children, I just realized I didn't have the same energy that I used to have to bring to my own students. And I started recognizing that when I got home, if I poured everything into my students, which is what I did as a teacher, I didn't have a lot of energy left for my own kids. And I really started feeling like I couldn't do both roles well. And I started getting that, I don't know if this is the right job for me anymore. I don't know if I want to show up like I used to, because I would rather show up for my children. And when those doubts start coming in, that's when it's time to leave, quite honestly. And Donna, I think the best tip is, as soon as you get that inkling that maybe it's time to move on, because there's nothing worse than the employee that everyone knows is unhappy. You having to come to work every day to a role that you just end up hating because it's not serving anyone, right? It's not serving anyone by having someone who's not happy in their position, because that's when they stop doing their job well. That's when they, become uncommitted. That's when they care less about the quality of their work. And I believe that's when you burn bridges. It's like, it's a lot easier to say, I've loved working here. This is amazing. I'm still doing a great job, but
right.
I think it's time for me to move on, instead of someone saying, what's wrong with you? The last year, you have not been who you have been when you first came on. And that's when I think a lot of the negative energy starts, is when you stay in a position too long. And then there's that resentment, and there's, the work ethic goes down. And I think that's the worst thing that can happen.
This is actually a really great transition. I'm going to ask a little bit about professional development, but first, Kelly, I think you have some information to share with our audience about a course offering that we're going to have at MTI.
I do. And you're right. It goes right within, professional growth and development and things like that. And as Jerice has mentioned all week, here at the Mass Tort Institute, with our Mass Tort Academy, we are really dedicated and committed to education, recognizing that especially in the mass tort industry, education is critical, not only to have a successful firm and to be able to do your job well, but the bigger picture obviously is that then we can better serve our clients and the victims that we're working with on a daily basis. So with that, and with all of this good stuff that we've been talking about all week with wellness, knowing that a healthier employee is a happier employee, they do their jobs better, they call in sick less. We are super excited to be announcing our Wellbeing in Law mini course. So based on all of the topics that we've been talking about this week, we put together a mini course on 5 different aspects of well-being, to give all of you out there some more support outside of this week with your well-being in all of these different areas. And it's free, which is absolutely amazing. Yes, because this is our gift to the industry. So when this video is over, you can take a look in the comments. We will be giving a link for all of you to sign up for the waiting list. The course should be ready next week. So we would love for all of you to be out there and ready to jump in, so that you can make well-being part of your lifestyle and part of your job far beyond these 5 days.
Yes, and that's really one of the goals of Wellbeing Week in Law, is to just start the conversation, right? We're having these conversations, other law firms and other legal organizations are having conversations, and then we want to keep it going. We want to keep these ideas and topics going. We want owners and stakeholders to really begin to consider the importance of incorporating well-being programs at your law firms and companies. Kelly has given some great advice this week on simple things like water challenges and step challenges, incorporating spiritual wellness. And obviously today we've talked about some of the career things that we can do. The goal with the course is really to keep the conversation going and to give everyone some practical takeaways and things that you can start doing right now. So each module will have we call it homework assignment, but we'll have something for you to do to really start building your own wellness plan and to become more productive. So we're so excited about it. And so look for that in the chat at the end of the conversation. So on that note, I'll ask one final question before we wrap up. Professional development. We hear about it all the time. We're all required to do it in some way. Attorneys need CLEs, paralegals need CLEs. So there's lots of reasons why people have to do it. But why, from a well-being perspective, is it important to offer professional development and take on those opportunities?
I think the biggest thing is just being able to stay fresh. There's nothing worse than feeling like you are in a stagnant job, or that you have not grown in a job. I think growth and being able to grow in a job is where the promotions come from. It's where the larger responsibilities come from. It's how we continue to know and feel like we're adding value, like we're making a difference. And that all starts with professional growth. If we know the same thing that we knew 10 years ago, then how far can we actually grow in our job, right? And so whether it's knowledge about a tort, or it's a new skill like learning spreadsheets, or it's going out of your comfort zone and maybe doing something that's a little bit more personal, like finding your strengths or taking a course on how to work with your strengths, that consistent learning is the only thing that allows us to grow and to be able to prove that we are ready for bigger and better things within our workplace. Because like I said, doing the same thing that you've been doing for 10 years and having that same knowledge, that's the first thing that's going to stifle that feeling of growth.
Right.
And so it all starts with that. It is so important. And I honestly don't believe it matters if it's a YouTube video that teaches you something, or a free mini course like our Wellbeing in Law, all the way to the other side of getting a new certification or something like that. But that's what's going to keep that growth and that satisfaction happening in the workplace.
I agree. And I do think what's unique to Mass Tort, our clients a lot of time are driving our need for professional development, right? We're trying to keep up with them and what they know and their expectations for legal services. So I totally agree that it's very important. And if you're doing things you were doing 10 years ago, it's usually a bad sign. So thank you so much, Kelly, for your time today. Of course, we will be back tomorrow. We'll be talking about social well-being, the importance of social connections, very important during the global pandemic, where we've kind of had to stay away from each other, but we're going to kind of refocus on the importance of building healthy social networks. So please join us again tomorrow, 1:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you all for joining once again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.